According to federal authorities, a Tajik national has been arrested in Brooklyn, New York, accused of conspiring to provide material support to ISIS. That's the core fact here, the one that's actually been announced, and it's what this video walks through, using only what has been reported. RETENTIONCHECKPOINT. 0 o'clock hook. Lead with the verified core fact. No dramatization, no invented scene. Just the record and what it means. So what is this person accused of? What happens next in a case like this? And what does material support actually mean under federal law? That's what we're covering, in order, with sources at every step. RETENTIONCHECKPOINT. 030 resolution Ts. Frame the real question the case raises. Here's what's been reported. Federal authorities say a man identified as a Tajik national was arrested in Brooklyn. Prosecutors allege he tried to aid ISIS, the group also known as the Islamic State. He now faces federal charges tied to providing material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization. That's the extent of what's public. We're not adding a name we don't have, a date we can't confirm, or a scene we can't source. If other channels claim to know exact dollar figures, quote the arrest, or describe how the alleged conspiracy worked day to day, be skeptical unless they cite a primary source. That level of detail isn't part of the public record we're working from. I went back through how the Justice Department and FBI typically describe cases like this, and one thing kept coming up. These cases are almost never announced the moment agents open an investigation. RETENTIONCHECKPOINT. 3 o'clock stakes bend. Shift from the specific arrest to how such cases are typically built. They're usually announced after months, sometimes years, of surveillance, informants, and coordination between the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force and federal prosecutors. An arrest announcement is typically the end of one phase of an investigation, not the start of the public story. Let's get into what material support actually means, since it's one of the most misunderstood phrases in federal law and the charge described here. Congress made it a federal crime, under a statute prosecutors commonly cite as 18 U.S.C. Section 2339B, to knowingly provide material support or resources to a group the State Department has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. ISIS has held that designation for years. Material support doesn't require weapons or money changing hands directly. Under the statute, it can include training, expert advice, personnel, or other assistance, as long as prosecutors can show the person knew the organization was designated as terrorist or knew it engaged in terrorism. This is general legal context, how the law works broadly, not a claim about the evidence in this specific case. Here's the part that surprises people. You don't have to travel overseas or ever meet anyone connected to ISIS in person to be charged under this law. Prosecutors have brought material support cases against people accused of sending money, translating propaganda, offering encouragement online, or helping in other ways entirely from within the United States. That's the pattern behind headlines like this one. Counterterrorism enforcement is, in large part, a domestic effort now, aimed at people accused of supporting overseas networks while living in American communities. One word we should say plainly instead of rushing past: allegation. Everything described here, as reported, is an allegation. An arrest isn't a conviction. A federal charge isn't a finding of guilt. Under the American legal system, the man named in this case is presumed innocent unless and until he's proven guilty in court, with the government carrying the full burden of proof. That's not a disclaimer we're tacking on to cover ourselves. It's the actual legal standard that governs every stage ahead, from a detention hearing to arraignment to trial, if it gets that far. Here's what this tells us about where things stand right now. Material support prosecutions have become one of the most common tools federal prosecutors reach for in terrorism cases, precisely because the statute is written broadly enough to reach people who never picked up a weapon. That's by design. Whether that breadth is necessary for stopping harm before it happens, or a law that sweeps in people whose conduct varies wildly in seriousness, is a genuine, ongoing debate among legal scholars, defense attorneys, and civil liberties groups. It's worth understanding regardless of how any single case turns out. Here's a take that will probably get us some pushback. Cases like this get plenty of attention at the moment of arrest, and almost none once they move into the slower, less dramatic stages of the court system. A headline announces an arrest. Almost nothing covers the arraignment, the plea, or the sentencing months later. That gap, between the announcement and the outcome, is where most people's understanding of these cases gets frozen, and it's worth being honest about that. So here's a real question, not a rhetorical one. When a case like this becomes public, does the initial announcement give you enough to judge what actually happened? Or is it mostly there to show that federal law enforcement is active on this front? There's no single right answer. It depends on the case and on what comes out later. Where does this specific case stand right now? Based on what's publicly reported, the man has been arrested and faces federal charges connected to the material support allegation. What typically follows, procedurally, is an initial appearance before a federal magistrate judge, a detention hearing where prosecutors and defense attorneys argue over bail, and eventually an indictment or formal charges if the case proceeds. We don't yet know how this case will move through those stages, and we're not going to guess. A few things genuinely aren't known yet, at least from what's public. The full evidence prosecutors are relying on hasn't been detailed. Whether the defendant has entered a plea or retained counsel hasn't been part of the reported summary, and how the case will ultimately be resolved, trial, plea agreement, or dismissal, isn't something anyone outside the courtroom can predict right now. If you want to follow this yourself instead of waiting for another video, the primary sources are public: FBI, Gov's national press releases, the Justice Department's Eastern District of New York releases, and federal court filings, searchable through PACER once a case number is public. If you've followed other material support cases or seen how your own local federal court handles them, we'd genuinely like to hear about it in the comments. That's usually where the more interesting, case-specific detail actually lives, not in any single video, including this one.